The champagne flute trembled in my hand as I watched Madison loop her arm through Richard's elbow, her manicured nails gleaming under the graduation venue's crystal chandeliers. 22 years old. The same age as our son Marcus, who stood 15 feet away in his cap and gown, accepting congratulations from relatives who didn't know that his father's date was young enough to be his sister. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Mrs. Chen. A voice interrupted my thoughts. I turned to find Madison herself, all bleached teeth and highlighted hair, extending her hand. I've heard so much about you. I took her hand mechanically, feeling the smoothness of youth beneath my fingers. No wedding ring tan line like mine. No calluses from years of building something from nothing. It's Dr. Chen, I corrected gently, watching confusion flicker across her face. Oh, she giggled, the sound like wind chimes in a storm. Richard never mentioned you were a doctor. What kind? The kind with 3 PhDs. Richard interjected, appearing beside her with that proprietary hand on her lower back. Economics, international business, and corporate law. My ex-wife collects degrees like some people collect stamps. His words were meant to diminish, to make my achievements sound like quirky hobbies. What he didn't know was that those degrees had built the framework for the acquisition I'd been planning for 18 months. The acquisition that would finalize in exactly 72 hours. That's amazing, Madison breathed, though her eyes had already glazed over. I'm studying to be an influencer. Well, I mean, I already am one, but I'm taking online courses to, optimize my content strategy. I smiled, the same smile I'd perfected in boardrooms across 3 continents. How fascinating. Richard must be very proud. He is, she beamed, pressing closer to him. He's been so supportive. Actually, he's helping me launch my lifestyle brand. We're calling it Madison's Moments. He says his business expertise is really going to help me blow up. Richard's business expertise. I nearly laughed. The man who'd spent our entire marriage riding the coattails of my connections, who'd built his successful consulting firm entirely on referrals from my network, who'd convinced everyone that his moderate success was self-made genius rather than borrowed credibility. Mom! Marcus's voice cut through the crowd, and suddenly my son was there, solid and real, pulling me into a hug that smelled like his signature cologne and new beginnings. Can you believe it? I actually graduated. Summa cum laude, I murmured into his shoulder. I never doubted you for a second. When he pulled back, his eyes flicked between his father and Madison, something unreadable passing across his face. Dad. Madison. Son, Richard boomed, as if volume could compensate for the awkwardness. Congratulations. This is your big day. Thanks. Marcus's tone was flat. He turned back to me. Mom, Dean Patterson wants to meet you. Something about the endowment? Ah, yes. The endowment. The $5 million I'd quietly donated to the university's business school, anonymous except to the dean and the board of trustees. Richard thought I'd spent the past 3 years since our divorce finding myself in a modest apartment, living off alimony while he flourished. He had no idea I'd been building an empire. Of course, I said, squeezing Marcus's hand. Lead the way. As we walked away, I heard Madison's voice drift after us. Endowment? Is that like a scholarship thing? The dean's office was blessedly quiet, a refuge from the crowd outside. Dean Patterson stood as we entered, her gray hair perfectly coiffed, her handshake firm and knowing. Dr. Chen Marcus. She gestured to the leather chairs opposite her desk. I wanted to thank you personally before the official ceremony next week. Official ceremony? Marcus looked between us, confused. Your mother has been extraordinarily generous to this university, Dean Patterson explained. We're naming the new entrepreneurship center after her, the Alexandra Chen Center for Innovation and Enterprise. I watched the information process across my son's face. Surprise, pride, and then something that looked like understanding. He'd known I was doing well, but I'd been careful to keep the full extent of my success quiet. Not from shame, but from strategy. Mom, he said slowly, exactly how well are you doing? Well enough, I replied. We'll talk later. Today is about you. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Dean Patterson smiled. Your mother is being modest. The Chen Foundation's contributions to our programs have been transformative, and I understand congratulations are in order for your recent acquisition. Marcus's eyes widened. Acquisition? It's not finalized yet, I said quickly, shooting the dean a look. Still confidential. Of course, of course. Dean Patterson tapped her nose conspiratorially. But when it goes through, I expect it will make quite the splash in the business community. Taking over a mid-sized consulting firm is no small feat. The color drained from Marcus's face. A consulting firm? Mom, you're not Dad's firm? I met his eyes steadily. We really should discuss this later. The Stratford Consulting Group? His voice rose slightly. That's Dad's company. The one he's always bragging about, the one that's supposedly thriving. Is hemorrhaging money, I finished quietly. Has been for 2 years. Your father has been propping it up with loans against assets he doesn't fully own, including his house, which he took in the divorce but is mortgaged to 120% of its value. The firm has been shopping for buyers for 6 months. They just don't know that every potential buyer they've been talking to has been working for me. Marcus sank back in his chair. Jesus, Mom. I'm not doing this out of spite, I said, though that wasn't entirely true. The firm is bleeding talent. Good people are going to lose their jobs if it fails completely. I'm offering a legitimate buyout that will save most of the positions. It's a sound business decision. That also happens to put you in charge of Dad's company. Yes, I admitted, that is a side benefit. Dean Patterson cleared her throat delicately. Perhaps I should give you two some privacy. After she left, Marcus and I sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, he leaned forward, elbows on his knees. How long have you been planning this? Since about 6 months after the divorce. I smoothed my dress, choosing my words carefully. When I realized that every achievement I'd ever had was being rewritten in his narrative. When I heard him tell people at a dinner party that he'd supported me through my little academic phase while he built his real business. When I discovered that he'd been telling investors and clients that his success was despite being held back by a wife who was more interested in theoretical knowledge than practical application. That's bullshit, Marcus said hotly. Everyone knows you're brilliant. Do they? I challenged gently. Or do they know what your father has been telling them for years? That I'm smart in an academic way, impractical, that he had to manage all our real finances because I couldn't be trusted with money. Marcus's jaw tightened. He knew it was true. During the divorce proceedings, I'd let Richard paint that picture, let him think I was too scattered and emotional to fight back properly. His lawyers had been confident, condescending, certain they could steamroll me into accepting whatever scraps Richard deemed appropriate. They hadn't expected me to have my own team. They definitely hadn't expected my team to have documented every financial irregularity, every hidden asset, every time Richard had borrowed from joint accounts to fund his business ventures. The final settlement had been far more favorable than anyone expected, but I'd structured it carefully, enough to look like a solid win without revealing my full financial position. "Does Dad know?" Marcus asked. "About the acquisition?" "Not yet. The board is voting Tuesday. If approved, the announcement goes public Thursday. I wanted to tell you first." I reached over and took his hand. "I know this is complicated. He's your father, and I don't expect you to choose sides. Mom." Marcus squeezed my hand. "I've known for years that Dad takes credit for things that aren't his. I've watched him diminish your accomplishments at every family gathering. I've seen the way he talks about you to Madison and his friends, like you're some kind of joke. A cautionary tale about what happens when women prioritize education over practicality." He paused. "I'm not going to pretend I'm upset about this. I'm just surprised it took you this long." Something warm bloomed in my chest. My son, 22 years old, and already wiser than his father had ever been. "There's something else you should know," I said. "The acquisition includes a restructuring plan. Your father's position as CEO will be eliminated. I'm offering him a consulting role at 40% of his current salary, with performance reviews every quarter." Marcus let out a low whistle. "He's going to lose his mind." "Probably." I allowed myself a small smile. "But the alternative is watching the company go bankrupt and losing everything. At least this way, he keeps something, and the employees keep their jobs. When does he find out?" "I'll tell the board on Tuesday. They'll inform him Wednesday. I wanted you to hear it from me first, and I wanted you to understand why." Marcus nodded slowly, processing. "Does Madison know? About any of this?" "I doubt she knows much about anything." The words came out harsher than I intended. "Sorry, that was unkind, but accurate." Marcus's expression was troubled. "Mom, she called you at the house last week. I was visiting Dad, and she answered his phone. She spent 20 minutes telling me how grateful she was that you were being so understanding about her relationship with Dad. How mature and evolved you were for not causing drama." I felt my eyebrows rise. "Did she now?" "She said you and Dad had outgrown each other, and that she was glad everyone could be adult about it. That you were focusing on finding yourself while Dad needed someone who could match his ambition and energy." Marcus's voice dripped with disgust. "I wanted to tell her that Dad's entire business was built on your connections, and that his ambition mostly involves taking credit for other people's work, but I figured it wasn't my place." "You're right. It wasn't." I studied my son's face, seeing echoes of my own features mixed with Richard's. "But I appreciate the loyalty." "She also," Marcus continued, his voice dropping, "asked if I thought she should call you Mom." I froze. "I'm sorry. What?" "She said that since she and Dad are getting serious, and since she's the same age as me, we could be like siblings. She thought it might be nice if we were one big modern family, and that part of that would be her respectfully acknowledging you as a mother figure." For a moment I couldn't breathe. The audacity, the sheer, breathtaking audacity of this child. Because that's what she was, really, a child playing dress-up in an adult relationship, thinking she could waltz into my life and claim maternal status. "What did you tell her?" I managed. "I told her that under no circumstances should she ever call you Mom, that it would be deeply inappropriate and disrespectful, and that our family structure was none of her business." Marcus's eyes flashed with anger. She pouted and said I was being closed-minded, that Dad had assured her everyone would be welcoming. Of course he did. I felt a headache beginning to bloom behind my eyes. Your father has always been good at making promises on other people's behalf." A knock at the door interrupted us. Dean Patterson poked her head in apologetically. "Sorry to interrupt, but the photographer is looking for family photos. Should I tell them you need a few more minutes?" "No, we're done here." I stood, smoothing my dress. Marcus rose with me, and we headed back toward the reception. The photographer had set up near the main entrance, herding families into position with practiced efficiency. Richard was already there, Madison attached to his side like a particularly expensive accessory. "There you are," Richard called out, waving us over. "Come on, family photo time." I walked over slowly, Marcus beside me. The photographer positioned us with professional speed, Marcus in the center, Richard and me on either side, Madison hovering uncertainly at Richard's elbow. "Should I—" Madison gestured vaguely. "Of course." Richard pulled her forward. "You're part of the family now, sweetheart." I saw Marcus's jaw clench but said nothing. This wasn't the moment. Not yet. The photographer started snapping, calling out instructions. "Turn slightly this way." Big smiles. "Look at each other, not the camera." Standard family photo fare. Except we weren't a standard family anymore. We were the fragments of something that had broken, held together by the tenuous thread of our mutual love for our son. "Beautiful," the photographer declared. "Now, how about just the parents with the graduate?" "Oh, I should step back," Madison said, but Richard kept his hand on her waist. "Actually," he said, and I heard the edge in his voice, the one he used when he was about to make a point. "Madison is part of Marcus's life now. I think she should be in the photos." "Dad," Marcus said quietly, a warning. "It's fine," I interjected smoothly. "The photographer can take several versions, some with, some without. That way everyone's happy." Madison beamed at me. "You're so understanding, Dr. Chen. You know," she continued, apparently unable to read the room. "Richard told me how amicable your divorce was, how you both wanted what was best for Marcus and didn't let ego get in the way. I think that's really mature." I heard Marcus make a small choking sound beside me. "Richard has always been good at rewriting history," I said pleasantly. "It's one of his many talents." Richard's smile tightened. "Alexandra has an interesting way of remembering things. The important point is we've both moved on." "Exactly." Madison squeezed his arm. "And I'm so glad we could all be here together for this special day. It feels like, I don't know, like we're all starting a new chapter, you know? Marcus graduating, you two both finding happiness in your new lives." She turned her bright, empty smile on me. "Richard says, you've been doing some consulting work? That's so great that you're keeping busy." "Consulting work." I bit back a laugh. That was what Richard had told her, that I was doing some light consulting to keep busy. "Something like that," I said, though I prefer to think of it as strategic acquisition planning. "Oh, that sounds fancy." Madison's eyes glazed over again. "I don't really understand all that business stuff. I'm more of a creative type, you know? Vision boards and manifestation and creating content that inspires people." "How valuable," I murmured. The photographer finished, and we began to disperse. But before I could escape, Madison caught my arm, her grip surprisingly firm for someone who seemed to exist mostly on air and optimism. "Dr. Chen, can I talk to you for a second? Like, privately?" I glanced at Richard, who looked as surprised as I felt, then at Marcus, who shrugged helplessly. "Of course." She led me to a quiet corner near the restrooms, away from the crowd. Up close, I could see the careful makeup, the expensive highlights, the subtle work that had been done to her nose and lips. Richard's type, I thought bitterly. Young, pretty, malleable. I wanted to ask you something, Madison began, her voice dropping to what she probably thought was a conspiratorial whisper. Richard's birthday is coming up next month, and I want to do something really special for him. Something that shows how much I appreciate everything he's done for me. But I don't really know, what he likes. I mean, I know what he likes, she giggled, but for a gift? I stared at her, genuinely speechless for a moment. She wanted gift advice. For my ex-husband. From me. Madison, I said carefully, don't you think you should know what he likes? If you're in a relationship with him? Well, yeah, but we've only been together for 8 months, and he's kind of mysterious about his past, you know? He doesn't talk much about what life was like before, and I thought, who better to ask than the person who knew him for 22 years? 22 years. The same number of years she'd been alive. The cosmic joke wasn't lost on me. He likes single malt scotch, I heard myself saying. Macallan 25 specifically. He enjoys custom-made dress shirts from a tailor in Hong Kong named Chen, no relation. He collects first edition business books, particularly anything by Peter Drucker. And he appreciates expensive fountain pens, though he'll never actually use them because he's afraid of damaging them. Madison's eyes lit up. Oh my God, that's so helpful. See, this is what I mean. You guys can totally be friends. Richard said you probably wouldn't be open to it, but I knew if I just tried to connect with you... Madison. I cut her off gently. I'm giving you this information because you asked, not because we're friends. Richard and I have a complicated history, and while I'm glad he's found someone who makes him happy, that doesn't mean you and I are going to have slumber parties and braid each other's hair. Her face fell. I just thought, Richard said you were really focused on your career when you were married, that you didn't have time for the relationship. I wanted to show you that I'm different, that I'm making him a priority. Something twisted in my chest. Of course that's what he'd told her, that I'd been too busy, too ambitious, too focused on my own success to pay attention to our marriage. Not that he'd been systematically undermining my achievements, taking credit for my work, or using my connections to build himself up while pushing me down. Madison, I'm going to tell you something, and you can choose to hear it or not. I kept my voice level, almost kind. The story Richard tells about our marriage is his version of events. It's designed to make him look like the victim, like he was held back by a wife who was more interested in degrees than in him. But the truth is more complicated than that. Marriages fail for a lot of reasons, and rarely is one person entirely at fault. But you're not bitter, she said quickly, almost desperately, right? I mean, you seem so happy and successful now. Richard said you bloomed after the divorce, that you finally found yourself. Bloomed after the divorce. Found myself. As if I'd been some wilting flower in a dark room, waiting for the sunshine of Richard's absence to thrive. I've certainly come into my own, I said truthfully. The divorce gave me clarity about a lot of things. See? Madison bounced slightly on her heels. That's exactly what I mean. You guys helped each other grow. You pushed him to be successful, and he pushed you to find your independence. It's like you were each other's stepping stones to your best selves. I wondered if she heard the irony in her own words. Richard had indeed used me as a stepping stone, though not in the inspirational way she imagined. I need to get back to Marcus, I said, extracting myself from the conversation. Enjoy the rest of the reception. Wait. She grabbed my arm again. One more thing. Richard and I are thinking about getting engaged soon, within the next few months. And I know it might seem fast, but when you know You know, right? And I was hoping, I know it might be weird, but I was hoping you might be open to meeting up sometime before the engagement, just so we could talk, woman to woman, and you could give me advice about being married to Richard. I want to do it right, you know. I want to be the wife he deserves. The wife he deserves. Oh, the possibilities hidden in that phrase. Madison, I said slowly, if Richard proposes to you in the next few months, I strongly suggest you insist on a prenuptial agreement, a very thorough one, with independent legal representation on both sides. Her face paled slightly. A prenup? But that's so unromantic. It's like planning for failure. It's planning for reality, I corrected. And if Richard balks at the idea, that should tell you something. He's told me prenups are for people who don't really trust each other, she said, a defensive note creeping into her voice. He said what he and I have is based on love and faith, not legal contracts. Of course he had, because a prenup would reveal what Richard didn't want her to know, that his financial situation was far more precarious than he pretended, that his assets were heavily leveraged, that his income was about to take a dramatic hit. Then you have nothing to worry about, I said. Enjoy the party. I left her there, looking confused and slightly hurt, and made my way back to Marcus. He was talking with his girlfriend, Kara, a sharp-eyed pre-med student I'd always liked. When he saw me, he excused himself and came over. What did she want? Gift advice for your father's birthday, I said, and to tell me about their impending engagement. Jesus. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. He's really going to marry her? Apparently. Did you warn her? I suggested a prenup. She thinks they're unromantic. So that's a no then. Marcus looked across the room to where Richard and Madison were posing for more photos, his arm around her waist, her head on his shoulder. They looked happy. Young love. Well, young on one side at least, in all its naive glory. She wouldn't listen anyway, I said. Some lessons you have to learn yourself. Kara joined us, sliding her hand into Marcus's. Your dad's girlfriend just asked me if I wanted to be a bridesmaid when they get married, she said without preamble, because, and I quote, it would be so fun to have another young person in the wedding party. Marcus closed his eyes. Kill me now. I told her I'd have to check my schedule, Kara continued, her eyes dancing with suppressed laughter. She said she understands that med school is demanding, but that she hopes I can prioritize family. Family. Kara shook her head. I've met her exactly twice. She's building a narrative, I said quietly, watching Madison across the room. She wants to be part of the family so badly that she's trying to force it into existence. She'll be disappointed when reality doesn't match her vision board. Speaking of reality not matching expectations, Marcus said, lowering his voice. Are you really going to go through with the acquisition? Yes. Even knowing it's going to blow up Dad's whole world? I met my son's eyes steadily. Especially knowing that? The company needs leadership that understands sustainable growth, not just flashy presentations and borrowed credibility. Your father has been coasting on reputation and connections for too long. It's time someone held him accountable. And that someone happens to be you? Life is funny that way. I touched his cheek gently. Are you okay with this? Really? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his gaze moving between me and his father. Finally, he nodded. Yeah, Mom. I'm okay with it. Actually, I think it's kind. Of brilliant. Ruthless, maybe. But brilliant. Ruthless, I repeated, tasting the word. Was I being ruthless? Or was I simply ensuring that the truth finally came to light, that the narrative Richard had been spinning for years was exposed for the fiction it was? The reception continued around us. Laughter and champagne, graduates and proud parents, futures being toasted and celebrated. Marcus was pulled away to take photos with his friends, and I found myself alone for a moment, watching the tableau of my former life play out. Richard caught my eye across the room and raised his glass in a mock salute. Even from here, I could see the smugness in his smile. He thought he'd won, thought he'd escaped our marriage unscathed, moved on to someone younger and more pliable, built a successful career on the foundation of connections I'd provided without ever acknowledging the debt. I raised my own glass in return, letting my smile show just enough teeth to be unsettling. He had no idea what was coming. None of them did. The evening wore on, a blur of small talk and carefully maintained facades. I smiled and chatted with other parents, accepted congratulations on Marcus's achievements, deflected questions about my own work with practiced vagueness. Oh, a little of this and that. Keeping busy. You know how it is. Around 8 o'clock, Marcus found me again. Mom, a bunch of us are going out to dinner. You should come. I don't want to intrude on your celebration. You wouldn't be intruding. Besides, Dad and Madison already said they can't make it. Something about dinner reservations at that new place downtown. The one where you need a reservation 6 months in advance. Le Bernardin, I said automatically. The restaurant I'd introduced Richard to 5 years ago when we celebrated his promotion, the promotion I'd orchestrated through backroom conversations with board members I'd known since grad school. Yeah, that one. So it'll just be me and my friends, and you and Kara's parents. Low key. Please? How could I refuse? This was my son's day, and he was asking me to be there. Okay, I agreed, but I'm buying. Mom, you don't have to. I want to. I squeezed his hand. It's not every day my baby graduates summa cum laude. I'm not a baby anymore, he protested, but he was smiling. You'll always be my baby. That's non-negotiable. The restaurant Marcus chose was a cheerful Italian place near campus, the kind with checkered tablecloths and enthusiastic waiters, and portions large enough to feed a small army. We claimed a long table in the back, and I found myself surrounded by 22-year-olds, their whole lives ahead of them, full of plans and dreams, and the beautiful certainty that comes from not yet knowing how hard the world can be. Kara's parents, Tom and Linda, were warm and genuine, the kind of people who'd built a good life through hard work and love rather than manipulation and borrowed glory. We fell into easy conversation about our children, about medicine and business, about the future. Marcus says you're in acquisitions? Tom asked over the appetizers. Among other things, I confirmed. I've been putting together a deal that should close this week, actually. Anything you can talk about? I considered. The announcement would be public in less than a week anyway. I'm acquiring a mid-sized consulting firm, Stratford Consulting Group. You might have heard of it. Tom's eyebrows rose. Richard's company, your ex-husband's firm. So he knew. Of course he knew. Marcus and Kara had been dating for 2 years. They told each other things. The very same, I confirmed, watching his reaction. That's bold. That's one word for it. I took a sip of wine. The firm has good bones, but poor management. It needs restructuring, new leadership, better financial oversight. I'm in a position to provide all of that. And Richard, we'll have options. I set down my glass. Whether he takes them or not is up to him. Linda leaned forward, her eyes sharp with understanding. Does he know? Not yet. Oh boy, Tom muttered. That's going to be quite a conversation. I'm counting on it. The food arrived, and the conversation shifted to lighter topics: summer plans, grad school applications, internships, and travel. I watched Marcus laugh with his friends, watched the easy affection between him and Kara, and felt something settle in my chest. Whatever happened with Richard, whatever fallout came from the acquisition, Marcus would be okay. He had good people around him. He had a good head on his shoulders. He'd be okay. My phone buzzed in my purse. I ignored it through the main course, but when it buzzed again during dessert, I excused myself and stepped outside to check it. 2 messages from Sarah, my executive assistant and closest confidant. Board confirmed for Tuesday 9 a.m. All members will attend in person. Also, got an interesting call from Jennifer at Sterling Investments. Says Richard came to her last week asking about emergency bridge loans. She turned him down but thought you should know. I leaned against the brick wall of the restaurant, letting this information sink in. Richard was scrambling for money. That meant he knew something was wrong, even if he didn't know the extent of it yet. He was trying to shore up his position, to find cash to cover whatever holes were starting to show. Too late. I typed back, "Thanks for the heads up. Let Jennifer know we'll be in touch after the acquisition closes. Sterling might be interested in financing the expansion." Another message buzzed through, this time from an unknown number. I almost didn't open it, but something made me tap the screen. "Dr. Chen, this is Madison. I got your number from Marcus. Hope that's okay. I just wanted to say thank you again for being so nice today. Richard was right. You really are amazing. I'm so glad we're going to be family." I stared at the message for a long moment, trying to decide how to feel about it. Annoyed? Amused? Sad for this girl who had no idea what she was walking into? I settled on resigned and typed back, "You're welcome. Enjoy your dinner." Before I could put my phone away, another message came through. "BTW. Richard wanted me to ask if you could send over some files from when you guys were married. Something about old tax documents. He said you'd know what he meant." Ah, there it was. Richard was looking for documentation, trying to piece together his financial history, probably realizing that things didn't quite add up. He was sending Madison to ask because he thought I'd be more likely to help her than him. "Tell Richard to have his attorney contact my attorney if he needs any official documents," I typed back. "That's the proper channel for those requests." Oh. Okay. He just thought since we're all being friendly and mature about everything. "We are being friendly and mature," I replied. "That's why we have attorneys to handle the business side of things. Keeps everything clean and professional." The dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally. "Okay, thanks." I returned to the table to find dessert had been served. Tiramisu and cannoli, and some kind of chocolate thing that probably had 1,000 calories per bite. Marcus looked up as I slid back into my seat. "Everything okay?" "Just work stuff." I picked up my fork. "Nothing that can't wait." The rest of the evening passed pleasantly. We ate too much, laughed too loud, and made the kind of memories that Marcus would look back on fondly when he was my age. When we finally headed to our cars around 11, Marcus hugged me tight. "Thanks for coming, Mom. It meant a lot." "Nowhere else I'd rather be," I said truthfully. "Even with Dad and Madison being all weird?" "Especially with that." I pulled back to look at him. "Your father's choices are his own. They don't change how proud I am of you, or how much I love you." "Love you too, Mom." He hesitated. "Are you going to be okay? With everything that's coming?" "I'm going to be fine," I assured him. "Better than fine. This is something I need to do, and I'm ready for it." He nodded, accepting this, and headed off with Kara and their friends. I watched them go, these bright young things with their whole lives ahead of them, and felt the weight of what I was about to do settle more firmly on my shoulders. The drive home took 20 minutes through quiet streets. My apartment, a penthouse in a building I'd purchased through one of my shell companies, was dark and peaceful when I arrived. I kicked off my heels and poured myself a glass of wine, then settled at my desk to review the final acquisition documents one more time. Everything was in order. The financing was arranged. The board members were briefed and supportive. The restructuring plan was solid, backed by months of analysis and consultation with the best minds in the business. The employment contracts for the existing staff were generous, protecting everyone except the top tier of management, Richard's cronies, the ones who'd been complicit in the mismanagement, who'd looked the other way when expense reports didn't quite add up or when company resources were used for personal benefit. My phone rang, Richard's name flashing on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hello, Richard." "Alexandra." His voice was jovial, enhanced by alcohol and whatever false sense of victory he'd been celebrating. "I hope I'm not calling too late." "Not at all. What can I do for you?" "I wanted to thank you for being so gracious today. With Madison. I know it can't be easy seeing me with someone new." I let the silence stretch just long enough to be uncomfortable. "Madison seems very enthusiastic about life." He laughed. "She's something, isn't she? So different from—" He stopped himself, but we both knew how that sentence would have ended. "So different from you." "Anyway, I also wanted to ask about those documents Madison mentioned. The old tax returns and financial statements from when we were married. I'm doing some retirement planning, and my advisor needs the historical data." "Your attorney should contact my attorney," I said, echoing what I'd told Madison. "That's the appropriate channel." "Come on, Alexandra. After all these years, can't we just handle this like adults, without getting lawyers involved?" "We are adults," I said pleasantly. "That's exactly why we have lawyers to handle these things properly." A beat of silence. "You know, sometimes I forget how rigid you can be. Everything by the book, everything formal and cold. It's no wonder—" He stopped again. "It's no wonder what, Richard?" I kept my voice level, curious to see if he'd actually say it. "Nothing. Never mind. Just have your attorney call mine, I guess. If you want to be difficult about it." "I'm not being difficult. I'm being professional." "There's a difference." "Right. Professional. That's always been your favorite word, hasn't it?" The alcohol was making him mean now. "Well, enjoy your professionalism, Alexandra. Madison and I are going to enjoy living our lives, building our future. Unlike some people, we know that there's more to life than business and degrees and proving how smart you are all the time." "I'm sure you are building something," I said quietly. "The question is how long it will last." "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing at all. Enjoy the rest of your evening, Richard." I hung up before he could respond, then immediately blocked his number. If he needed to reach me, he could do it through proper channels. The wine was smooth and expensive, sliding down easily as I looked out at the city lights below. Tuesday was 2 days away. Tuesday morning, the board would vote. By Tuesday afternoon, Richard would know that his world had shifted. By Thursday, when the announcement went public, everyone would know. I should have felt anxious or guilty or something. Instead, I felt calm, purposeful, ready. This wasn't revenge, not exactly. Or if it was revenge that served a higher purpose. The company would be stronger for the changes I was making. The employees would be better protected. The clients would receive better service. And Richard? Richard would finally face the consequences of years of taking credit for other people's work, of building a reputation on borrowed glory. My phone buzzed one more time, another message from an unknown number. I opened it warily. "Dr. Chen, this is Dean Patterson. I apologize for contacting you on your personal number, but I wanted to give you a heads up. Richard stopped by my office this evening asking questions about your endowment and the new center. He seemed very surprised by the scope of your contributions. I kept our conversation brief and professional, but I thought you should know he's asking around." I typed back quickly. "Thank you for letting me know. I appreciate your discretion." So Richard was starting to realize something was wrong. Starting to understand that maybe the story he'd been telling himself and everyone else about my post-divorce life wasn't quite accurate. He was poking around, trying to figure out how I'd managed to donate $5 million to the university when he thought I was barely scraping by on alimony. Let him wonder. Let him piece it together. In 48 hours, everything would be clear. I finished my wine and headed to bed, setting my alarm for early morning. Tomorrow I had meetings with the legal team, final reviews of the acquisition documents, and a video call with the CFO about the transition plan. There was work to be done, pieces to move into place, a future to build on the rubble of Richard's assumptions. As I drifted off to sleep, I thought about Madison's message, about her innocent enthusiasm for being family, about her complete lack of understanding regarding what was about to happen. Part of me felt sorry for her. She was young and naive and had no idea that the man she was building her dreams around was standing on sand. But mostly, I felt ready to reclaim the narrative Richard had stolen, ready to show him and everyone else exactly who I was and what I was capable of, ready to watch his carefully constructed facade crumble and see what was left underneath. The truth, I thought as sleep took me, has a way of coming out eventually. I was just helping it along. Tuesday morning arrived with perfect clarity. I dressed carefully, Armani suit in charcoal gray, my grandmother's pearl earrings, heels that added 3 inches to my height, armor for the battlefield that would be the Stratford boardroom. Sarah met me in the lobby at 8:30, tablet in hand, her expression focused. "Everyone's already here. Richard arrived 10 minutes ago, looking nervous." "He should be." I checked my reflection in the elevator mirror one last time. "Let's begin." The boardroom occupied the entire top floor, floor-to-ceiling windows offering views of the city skyline. 12 board members sat around the mahogany table, their faces familiar from months of careful cultivation. Richard stood by the windows, his back to the room, phone pressed to his ear. He turned when we entered, and I watched recognition flicker across his face, followed immediately by confusion. "Alexandra? What are you doing here?" "Good morning, Richard." I took my seat at the head of the table. "Please sit down. We're about to begin." "I don't understand. This is a board meeting. You can't just—" "Actually," interrupted Jonathan Hayes, the board chairman, "Dr. Chen can. She's the principal investor in the acquisition offer we're voting on today." The color drained from Richard's face. He sank into the nearest chair, his eyes fixed on me with dawning horror. No, you can't be serious." "Completely serious." I opened my folder, sliding copies of the presentation to each board member. "Gentlemen, ladies, thank you for being here. As you know, Stratford Consulting has been exploring strategic options for the past 6 months. What you may not know is that every potential buyer you've been speaking with has been a subsidiary of Chen Holdings." Richard's hands gripped the armrests, knuckles white. "This is insane. You're doing this to punish me. I'm doing this to save a company that's bleeding money. I clicked through to the first slide, a damning chart showing Stratford's decline over the past 2 years. Your firm is leveraged beyond sustainability. You've been propping up quarterly numbers with creative accounting while the actual client base shrinks by 18% year over year. That's industry-wide contraction. Your competitors grew by 12% in the same period. Another slide, comparing Stratford to similar firms. The difference is leadership, or rather, the lack of it. The presentation continued for 40 minutes. I detailed every financial irregularity, every inflated expense report, every client loss due to poor service or broken promises. The board members' faces grew increasingly grim as the scope of mismanagement became clear. Richard tried to interrupt several times, but Jonathan shut him down. Let her finish. When I reached the final slides, my restructuring proposal, the retention packages for employees, the new leadership structure, Richard was slumped in his chair, defeated. The offer is generous, I concluded. Full market value for the company despite its current state. Retention bonuses for all employees except C-suite executives, a consulting position for Richard himself at $180,000 annually, less than his current salary, but fair compensation for his institutional knowledge. You're firing me. His voice was hollow. From my own company. You'll have the option to stay in a reduced capacity, or you can take a severance package and move on. Either way, Stratford needs new leadership if it's going to survive. The vote was unanimous. 9 yes votes, 3 abstentions, including Richard, who sat frozen throughout the process. By 10 o'clock, it was done. Chen Holdings owned Stratford Consulting Group. The announcement goes public Thursday, I told the room. HR will begin briefing employees tomorrow. Richard, my team will meet with you this afternoon to discuss your options. He stood slowly, his movements mechanical. 22 years. I built this company for 22 years. You built it on borrowed credibility, I said quietly, just loud enough for him to hear. On connections I provided, clients I introduced you to, strategies I developed while you took credit. This isn't punishment, Richard. It's correction. He left without another word, and I watched him go, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. Sarah touched my elbow. That was perfect, clean, professional. It's not over yet. I checked my watch. He'll call Marcus within the hour, then Madison, then every mutual acquaintance we have, spinning some version of events where I'm the villain. Let him spin. You have documentation. I have truth. But Richard has always been better at selling stories than facts. We spent the rest of the day in strategy sessions with my executive team, planning the transition, reviewing org charts, scheduling employee meetings. Around 3, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Dad called. He's losing it. Says you destroyed him. I told him I already knew. He hung up on me. I replied, "Are you okay?" "Yeah. Honestly, I'm proud of you. He had this coming. Thank you. That means everything. Madison's been calling me too. Crying. Says you tricked Dad, that you've been planning this all along." I didn't answer. Probably wise. She'll figure it out eventually. That Dad's not who she thinks he is. Or she won't. Some people prefer comfortable lies to uncomfortable truths. That evening, I returned to my penthouse exhausted but energized. The hard part was done. Now came the rebuilding and watching Richard adjust to his new reality. Wednesday morning brought the employee briefings. I addressed the staff personally, standing in the main conference room with 200 worried faces staring back at me. "I know you're concerned about your jobs," I began. "Let me be clear. This acquisition is about strengthening Stratford, not dismantling it. Every position currently filled will remain filled. Your benefits packages will improve. Your professional development budgets will increase. What's changing is the leadership structure and our strategic direction. I explained the restructuring, the new reporting lines, the investment in technology and training. Gradually, the tension in the room eased. These were good people who'd been poorly led. They deserved better. "What about Richard?" someone called from the back. "Richard has been offered a consulting role. Whether he accepts is his decision." I paused, choosing my words carefully. "I know many of you have worked with him for years. This transition will be challenging, but I believe in this company's potential, and I believe in all of you." The applause was tentative at first, then grew stronger. Not everyone was convinced. Some of Richard's loyalists glared at me from the back rows, but most seemed cautiously optimistic. Richard didn't show up for the afternoon meeting with HR. His lawyer called instead, requesting the severance package details. He was choosing to leave rather than stay in a diminished role. I wasn't surprised. Thursday's announcement made headlines in the business press. "Tech executive acquires ex-husband's failing firm," read one. "Revenge or rescue, Alexandra Chen takes over Stratford Consulting," read another. My phone exploded with calls from reporters, investors, former colleagues. I ignored most of them, releasing a brief statement through my PR team. This acquisition represents a strategic opportunity to strengthen a valuable company while ensuring its employees' futures. Chen Holdings looks forward to building on Stratford's legacy. Richard, meanwhile, gave a scorching interview to a local business reporter. "My ex-wife has always been vindictive," he claimed. "She couldn't stand seeing me succeed after our divorce. This is pure revenge, disguised as a business deal. She's using her family money to destroy everything I built." Family money. The irony was exquisite. I'd built my fortune from scratch while he'd coasted on my connections. Marcus called that afternoon, his voice tight with anger. "Have you seen Dad's interview?" "I have." "He's making you sound like some kind of villain, like you schemed for years just to hurt him. He needs a narrative that lets him be the victim. Otherwise, he'd have to face the truth about his own failures. It's bullshit. I want to say something. Publicly. Set the record straight." "Don't." I kept my voice firm. "This is between your father and me. You don't need to be in the middle of it." "I'm already in the middle. He called Madison Mom in front of me yesterday. Actually said, 'Your mom and I when talking about some woman he's been dating for 8 months. I went still. "Madison called herself your mother?" "Not directly, but Dad's been pushing it. Talking about how she's stepping into a maternal role now that they're getting engaged. It's insane. The audacity. The sheer, breathtaking audacity." "Marcus, I need you to do something for me," I said slowly. "Record the next conversation where he refers to Madison as your mother, just in case we need it later." "Why? What are you planning?" "Nothing yet, but your father is spiraling, and people who spiral make mistakes. I want to be prepared." That weekend, Madison finally called me directly. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Dr. Chen?" Her voice was small, uncertain. "It's Madison." "Hello, Madison." I wanted to understand. "Richard says you've been planning this for years, that you manipulated him, used your connections to trap him. But that doesn't sound like the person I met at Marcus's graduation." "It's not." I walked to my window, looking out at the city. "Madison, I'm going to tell you something, and you can believe it or not. I acquired Stratford because it was failing and I could save it. The fact that Richard was CEO was actually a complication, not a motivation. I would have preferred a clean business deal with a stranger." "But you let him lose everything." "He didn't lose everything. He has a generous severance package. He kept the house, though he'll need to refinance given his debt load. He has options. What he lost was the illusion of success built on other people's work. Silence on the line, then quietly. He told me he built that company from nothing, that he was self-made. Richard is very good at telling stories. He's less good at acknowledging the truth, which is that his success was built on a network I provided, clients I introduced him to, and strategies I helped develop. When we divorced, he kept those connections but lost access to my ongoing support. The cracks started showing immediately. He said you were too focused on your career to care about the marriage. I was focused on building something real. He was focused on taking credit for it. Those are different things. Another long pause. Are you saying he lied to me? I'm saying Richard tells the version of events where he's always the hero or the victim, never the architect of his own problems. You'll need to decide for yourself what's true. I don't know what to believe anymore. Her voice cracked. Everything's falling apart. He's drinking more, getting angry. Yesterday, he threw his phone across the room because some investor didn't return his call. Madison. I gentled my voice. You need to think carefully about whether this is the life you want. You're 22. You have time to make different choices. He said we're getting married next month. Quick ceremony, just family. He says he needs something good in his life right now. My stomach dropped. Don't do it. Not now, not while he's in crisis. If he loves you, he'll wait until things stabilize. But I love him. He needs me. Needing someone and loving them aren't the same thing, and marrying someone to save them never works. You're just saying that because you're bitter about your divorce. I'm saying it because I spent 22 years with a man who used me as a stepping stone and then rewrote history to make himself look better. I'm trying to save you from the same mistake. She hung up. I wasn't surprised. 2 weeks later, Marcus called with news. Dad and Madison got married yesterday, City Hall. He didn't even tell me until it was done. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Don't be. I'm just glad I wasn't there to watch him implode in real time. He paused. She called herself my stepmother in the text announcing the marriage. Actually wrote, "We hope you'll accept me as your stepmom." What did you say? I said, "Congratulations," and left it at that. What else could I say? Over the following months, I rebuilt Stratford into something sustainable. New clients, better processes, actual accountability. The employees thrived under competent leadership. Revenue stabilized, then grew. Richard, meanwhile, spiraled. He burned through his severance package in 6 months. Expensive cars, a lavish honeymoon, bad investments trying to prove he could still succeed. Madison's Instagram showed increasingly desperate attempts at lifestyle content, forced smiles in expensive restaurants they couldn't afford, designer handbags that were obvious fakes, captions about living our best life that rang hollow. Marcus showed me a particularly cringeworthy post one evening over dinner. Madison, posing outside Stratford's offices with the caption, "So proud of my husband Richard for building this amazing company. True entrepreneurs never stop grinding." Boss babe. Power couple. Entrepreneur life. She has no idea you own it now, Marcus said, shaking his head. Apparently not. Should someone tell her? She'll figure it out eventually. Or not. Either way, it's not my problem. But the universe has a sense of irony. 3 months after their quickie wedding, Madison showed up at my office unannounced. My assistant tried to turn her away, but I overheard the commotion and told her to send Madison in. She looked different, thinner, her highlights grown out, her designer clothes slightly worn at the edges, no longer the glossy influencer from the graduation. Dr. Chen. She hovered in the doorway, uncertain. Thank you for seeing me. Sit down, Madison. What can I do for you? She collapsed into the chair, and suddenly she was crying, deep, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. You were right. About everything. The prenup, the marriage, all of it. You were right. I waited, letting her cry it out. He lied about everything, she finally managed. The company, the money, his success. It was all borrowed or exaggerated or just completely made up. We're drowning in debt. The house is being foreclosed. He maxed out my credit cards without telling me. And now he's saying it's all your fault, that you destroyed him, that if you hadn't stolen his company, everything would be fine. I didn't steal anything. I acquired a failing business and turned it around. I know. I finally looked into it. Read the actual news articles, not just Richard's version. Talked to some of his old employees. She wiped her eyes. He used you. For years. And I let him use me too because I was too stupid and starstruck to see it. You weren't stupid. You were young. And he's very good at manipulation. I called you. Her voice dropped to a whisper. In the beginning, after the graduation, I asked Marcus if I should call you Mom. I remember. I was trying so hard to be part of the family, to be what Richard said you weren't. Supportive, focused on him, not too ambitious or cold. I actually thought I was better than you. She laughed bitterly. God, I was so arrogant. Madison, why are you here? I want a divorce, but Richard says he'll fight it, that he'll make sure I get nothing. And I don't even care about the money. There isn't any money, but I can't stay married to him. I can't watch him destroy himself and blame everyone else. I just want out. I studied her carefully. She looked exhausted, defeated, but also determined. Maybe there was hope for her after all. I'll refer you to my divorce attorney, I said. Tell her I sent you. She's expensive, but she's worth it. And she'll probably take your case pro bono given the circumstances. Why would you help me? Because you're 22 and you made a mistake. You don't deserve to pay for it for the rest of your life. I pulled out my card, wrote a name and number on the back. Call her today. Get out before this gets worse. Madison took the card with trembling hands. I'm sorry. For everything. For being part of his lies. For being so naive. She gestured helplessly. For trying to replace you. You weren't replacing me. You were being used as a weapon against me. There's a difference. She left quietly, and I watched her go, feeling something unexpected. Pity mixed with respect. It took courage to admit you were wrong, to walk away from a sinking ship even when you'd helped build it. Marcus called that evening. Madison reached out. Said you helped her find a divorce lawyer. I did. Dad's going to lose his mind. Your father lost his mind months ago. This is just the aftermath. He's already texting me, saying you're poisoning Madison against him, that you're determined to take everything from him, that you won't be happy until he's completely destroyed. What did you tell him? That maybe he should focus on rebuilding his life instead of blaming other people for his choices. He called me ungrateful and hung up. I heard the hurt in my son's voice. I'm sorry, Marcus. I never meant for you to lose your relationship with him. I didn't lose it. He threw it away the minute he chose his pride over honesty. Marcus sighed. You know what the worst part is? I spent years thinking he was successful, admiring his career, wanting to be like him. And it was all built on your work. Everything I thought was his was actually yours. Not everything. He has charm, charisma, presentation skills. Those are real talents. He just couldn't build something sustainable with them because he never learned that real success requires more than flash. Still, It's hard knowing my father is kind of a fraud. He's not a fraud. He's a cautionary tale about what happens when you confuse other people's achievements with your own. The divorce between Richard and Madison was swift and brutal. She got out with her credit cards paid off and nothing else. Richard got to keep his delusions and his debt. 6 months later, I ran into him at a coffee shop near Marcus's new apartment. He looked older, grayer, diminished in ways that had nothing to do with physical appearance. "Alexandra." He said my name like an accusation. "Richard. I hope you're happy. You've got everything now. The company, the reputation, even my wife, ex-wife. I have a successful business that I saved from bankruptcy. You still have options, Richard. You could rebuild, start fresh, learn from this." "Learn what? That vindictive ex-wives will destroy you if you dare to move on? Learn that success built on borrowed credibility isn't sustainable. That taking credit for other people's work will eventually catch up to you. That honest failure is better than dishonest success." He stared at me, and for just a moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Maybe recognition, maybe regret. But then his face hardened again. "You'll regret this someday. When you're alone in your perfect penthouse with your perfect company and no one to share it with. I have our son. I have a career I built myself. I have the truth. That's more than you ever had." He left without another word, and I watched him walk away, feeling nothing but relief. This chapter was finally closed. That evening, I met Marcus for dinner. Just the two of us, no drama, no tension. He told me about his new job, his plans with Kara, his hopes for the future. He was happy, settled, building his own life on honest foundations. "Mom," he said over dessert, "I need to tell you something. I know what you did, acquiring Dad's company, forcing the restructuring. It looked like revenge, but it wasn't, was it?" "It was accountability," I said simply. "And yes, maybe there was some satisfaction in it. But mostly it was about stopping a lie from continuing. Your father built a career on claiming credit for my work. That needed to end. I'm glad you did it, even if it was messy and complicated and hurt Dad. Some things need to be exposed." "Yes," I agreed. "They do." We finished our dinner in comfortable silence, and as I drove home later that night, I thought about the past year, the planning, the execution, the aftermath, the revenge that wasn't quite revenge, the justice that looked like vindication. Richard had called Madison his partner, his future, almost called her Marcus's mother. He'd used her the way he'd used me, as a prop in his carefully constructed story of success and victimhood. But the truth had a way of emerging, no matter how deeply it was buried, and I had made sure it saw daylight. My phone buzzed with a message from Madison. "Thank you for everything. Starting fresh. Got a real job, real plans. Learning who I actually am instead of who someone else needed me to be." I smiled and typed back, "Proud of you. That's real strength." The city lights glittered below my windows as I settled into my favorite chair with a glass of wine. Somewhere out there, Richard was probably crafting another story, another explanation for why his life hadn't turned out the way he planned. But I had the truth, and the company, and my son's respect. In the end, that was all the revenge I needed. The end. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.